Okay, you guys, we're going to work a few problems on the Algebra 2 semester review. So hopefully this will help. We're going to just do the odds, unless I see one that needs to be done that's not in the odds. So we're talking about radicals and rational exponents. So we're looking at how to convert these into simplified form. So just to kind of go over, when you have a exponent and a fraction, that's basically, this is going to be your power or your exponent, and this is basically going to be your radical index. Meaning that you could rewrite that as 49n to the fourth, and that 2 is what is the square root right here. So it's basically taking the square root of this. Okay? Another thing is when you're having a power up here outside the parentheses, you have to make sure that you distribute it to all the terms inside the parentheses. So this is basically the square root of 49, which is going to be 7. And the square root of n to the fourth is n squared. You're basically distributing the 1/2 exponent to the 49, and then 4 times 1/2 is also 2. So there's a couple of different ways that you can do that. You could say 49 to the 1/2 times n to the fourth to the 1/2, and you multiply those. So this is the square root of 49 is 7. You multiply 4 times 1/2, which is, well, 4 over 2, which 4 over 2 simplified is 2. So that would be n squared. So there's a couple of different ways that you can approach that type of a problem. So again, here you've got 64x to the fourth all to the 1/2. So when we take the, again, we can rewrite that as the square root of 64x to the fourth, or we can write it 64 to the 1/2 x 4 times 1/2. This, you just need to make sure you remember that this, when it's to a 1/2, it is taking the square root. So the square root of 64 is 8. 4 times 1/2 is going to be 4 over 2, which is going to be x squared. Okay. Now you're kind of doing it, again, you're simplifying. You could rewrite this as 64 m to the fourth all to the 1/4 power. Okay? That's where that comes from. But if you're just going to simplify that, 64, the fourth root of that is going to be, what number multiplied it by itself 4 times is going to give you 64. And that is, I believe, let me see here, can't remember, maybe 4. I think it's actually not 4, but let's try 4. 4 to the fourth is 256. So you know that this can be broken down into, if we're going to do it that way, 64 is 8 times 8, which is 4 times 2, which is 4 times 2, which is 2 times 2, which is 2 times 2. So we're looking for 4. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4 2's. So a 2 is going to come out of there. We've got 4 m's, which is m, 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 m. So we take an m out, and we're left with a 2 inside, which is this right here. Oh wait, 2 2's inside. I forgot about that one. So that's going to be 4. 2m to the 4th. Right there. So hopefully you guys kind of remembered how to do that, where you can break it down into the smallest factors. I need to get 4 of these because that's the index. And I'm left with a 2 here and a 2 here. There's 2 2's. 2 times 2 is 4. There's not enough of them to pull that out. Okay. Lastly, it's kind of getting messy, sorry. The square root of 12v to the 4th. Again, that could be written as 12v to the 4th to the 1/2 power. Those are equal to each other. So if we break down 12 into 4 and 3, because 4 times 3 equals 12, then 2 times 2 equals 4. So 2 times 2 times 3 equals 12. I'm going to circle my pairs. I just need 2 because their index there is assumed to be 2 unless it states otherwise. Here it was 4, but it's 2 unless it states otherwise. So I just need 2 2's, so I'm left with 2 square root of 3. And the v's, you can break that down in v squared and v squared if you want to do it that way. I've got 2 of those. You can also say 4 divided by 2 is 2. V squared times v squared is equal to 4v. All right, so here's your final answer. If you don't understand that, please come see me. All right. Here this is asking to find all the zeros. Basically, what you're trying to do, there's a few different ways to do that. What you're trying to do is see the zeros are where it crosses the x-axis. So these are your x-intercepts. So that is when y is 0, x is what? That's what we're trying to figure out. So there's a couple different ways. One is you can factor with your big X. One is that you can plug it in your calculator and look at your graph and look at your table. So your table, you're going to be looking for all the places that y equals 0 and x equals whatever it is. So I'm going to factor it first, and then I'll show you how to do it on the calculator. So I'm going to multiply my a and my c, and I'm going to get 3 times 6 is 18. Put that there. So I need to figure out what 2 numbers multiply to give me 18 and add to give me positive 11. Everything's positive, so that's going to be 2 and 9. Then I'm going to put this, since there is this 3 here, I have to use my grouping, or I have to use my slide and divide. Since most of you guys like the grouping, I'm going to do the grouping. But the end goal for you guys is to find out what numbers are going to multiply to give me this equation back again. And so if I do 3x cubed plus 11x squared plus 6x, right there I'm going to notice I can factor out an x because each of these terms have an x in it. So that can factor out into, I'm running out of space, x times 3x squared plus 11x plus 6. Do you see how I do that? I'm factoring out an x from each of those. Now, the numbers haven't changed, so I know I'm going to have a 2 and a 9 as my factors. Then, so I know I'm going to have an x out here. Now I can rewrite this, x squared plus what makes up 11x. 2x plus 9x. So 2x plus 9x. And my last factor is 6. So basically I've just rewritten this using these factors that I've created. Now I'm going to factor out what's my greatest common factor here. Well, 2 and 3 don't have any common factors, but there are x's. So I'm going to factor out an x, and I'm going to be left with 3x. So here, let's do it this way. X, 3x plus 2. I bring this down. What number can I factor between 9 and 6? 3 goes into both of those. 3 goes into 9 3 times. I'm left with 3x. 3 goes into 6 2 times. And lo and behold, these are the same. It's exactly the way it should be. So I need to then combine those two. So I get x plus 3 here, and then I'm going to be left with 3x plus 2. I'm factoring out basically this 3x plus 2, putting it there, and combining those two and putting it there. Then this is the x. Let me show you that. This x right here, outside here, was my greatest common factor. That's there. Hopefully that makes sense. But I'm not done. All I've done now is factored this, which has taken a little bit longer because I've explained it. I think you guys can do it faster than what I'm explaining it. So then, I'm going to get a different piece of paper so that you guys can see. I don't mess up. So now the question now asks the zeros. So I need to make sure that I take my equation and I'm trying to figure out what is x and y is 0. Okay? Well, I'm going to take each one and set each one of these equal to 0. So x equals 0. That's this. X plus 3 equals 0. And 3x plus 2 equals 0. So I figure out each of those. So if I'm going to solve for x here, I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides and get x equals minus 3. This one, I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides, get 3x equals negative 2. Then I have to divide by 3. I get x equals negative 2/3. And this one is already done. Okay. Ooh, I didn't, sorry. There you go. Hopefully you could see that. And hopefully you guys didn't really need to see that. So my 3 answers are 0, negative 3, and negative 2/3. Now, these two should show up in the calculator. This one will be a little bit harder to find. So let's plug that into the calculator and see how we can look it up in the calculator. So you need to take your calculator and you plug in to your y equals 3x to the 3rd power plus 11x squared. Oops, that was bad. Clear. I'm just going to clear it all. Goodness gracious. Clear. How come I won't clear? There we go. 3x to the 3rd power plus 11x squared plus 6x. Okay, and graph that. And that's what it looks like. And you see it's going to have 3 points, where it crosses the x-axis, because we have 3 answers, right? Our 3 answers were x equals 0, x equals -3, and -2/3. Those were our 3 answers, and let's see. So let's go to our table, and we're going to look for where y equals 0, and sure enough, y equals 0 at 0, 0. So that's 0, 0. The next one we're going to look at where x is -3, 0. Let's see if we can find that. Sure enough, there's that one. Then the next one is -2/3. Well, that's going to be somewhere in between these two, and we don't really see that. So you can go back to your graph and go to math and look for, or maybe you go to calc. That's what you do. You go to calc, you go to 2 to find your zeros, and now I want to find this 0 right here. So I'm going to go to the left of that one, enter. Then you're going to go to the right of it, which is right here, enter, guess, and sure enough it tells us -6.66 repeating 0, which is the same as 2/3. If I were to plug that into my calculator and say 2 divided by 3, and then put it and find out what the fraction is, that would be 2/3. So that's how you do those problems. I'm not going to do the rest. Let me know if you need help on those. That's the end of this video.